I want to welcome you to this conversation about serving our community in a virtual world. My name is Ann Ayers, and I am the Dean of the Colorado Women's College here at the University of Denver. And even more importantly, in this capacity, I am the co-lead of this great project that we have going on here, which is called Community Plus Values. The Community Plus Values team came together just over a year ago because we really wanted to just kind of share a stronger sense and experience of belonging with the people who are on our campus, and also the people who are part of our community but are not always on our campus. And we're really happy to be able to do that in this context for the last week, and we're going to keep doing these webinars. So we have some incredible guests today, two people that I just feel so honored to be able to call friends and colleagues. Dr. Amanda Moore McBride is here with us, and she is the Dean of the Graduate School for Social Work here at the University of Denver. It's fun when you get to read up on your friends, to look at their bios, and to find out that she has over 100 publications on the topic of civic engagement and community engagement, and really is a nationally recognized expert in the field. She has her most recent book, which is entitled Connecting Civic Engagement and Social Innovation Toward Higher Education's Democratic Promise. And so I'm so excited. That really is very recent. It just came out in the last, well, this month, right? Yeah. So that's something that will be fun for us to hear about and to read. And I also want to just say, I always like in introductions to add a little bit of a personal note. When I started here at the University of Denver 2.5 years ago, before I started, actually, just about a week before, I had an email from one person before I even had my DU address, and that was from Amanda, just welcoming me to the community. And so it's somebody who I find you always, Amanda, to be someone who practice what you preach. And so I love that about you. And Christine Benero, I'm very excited that you are here as well. Christine is the president and CEO of Mile High United Way. Your bio is just extraordinary. And of course, we've known each other for a few years because I had the pleasure of serving in a consulting capacity to Mile High United Way before I started here at the University of Denver. But your list is long and outstanding of the kinds of organizations that you've served over your career, including the Red Cross, and which I just think is one of the world's most iconic organizations that serves in times like today. You also have you were named in 2019. You were named one of Colorado's most admired CEOs by the Denver Business Journal, which is really cool, and received the Athena Award from our friends over at the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce. And then one that's near and dear to my heart is a Woman of Distinction by the Girl Scouts of Colorado. So I hope that you'll take a minute and just be inspired by their bios. You can go online and take a look. The third person I want to introduce is Dill Khan, who's a first-year graduate student here at DU in Media, Film, and Journalism Studies. She will get her master's in Media and Public Communication. And she joined our C+V team, our Community Plus Values team, to help us build community through storytelling. And I am learning so much from you, Dill. You are just fantastic. And what I appreciate most about Dill, I think I have to just say, is that she reminds me just to be human. I think on every single call and interaction, you always start with the heartfelt stuff. And that's really good. I think all three of you do that. Christine, certainly as a client of ours, you did that, and you've always done it through questions. So it's fun for me to think of you not being on the asking side, but the answering side today, because one of your great gifts is that you always ask questions that get to the heart of the matter. So I am thrilled to have you all here. I'm going to ask the first question, then I'm going to hand it over to our journalism student who's just going to rock it today. But what I wanted to start with all three of you is just to say we are in such uncharted territory. And I thought maybe just a personal check-in would be great. Just how are you all doing and what's going on in your lives and your families? And I thought maybe we start with Christine.
Good morning, and it is what an honor and a pleasure to be in this extraordinary company, and I will say company of pretty extraordinary women right at the moment. Yes. As well, being supported by a lot of pretty extraordinary men as well. Thank you for asking about me and about my family. We are incredibly fortunate at the moment to be well and to be healthy. I was saying earlier today, we just celebrated my mom's 89th birthday, my father's 90th birthday next week. As I said, I want to put them in bubble wrap and keep them safe, but technology lets us stay connected, and I'm feeling very blessed and fortunate. Not saying I don't get tired and discouraged on occasion, but that's where these kind of conversations lift me up.
That's great. And a happy birthday to both of them.
Thank you.
Their birthdays
Thank
you
you.
can celebrate all year long. Those are
Absolutely.
great. Amanda, how are you doing?
You know, I'm hanging in there. I think today's topic is the reason why I feel surrounded by a community of people that care about me and are checking in on me. I also I have older parents. My dad's in memory care in Littleton, and then my mom lives here with us, both immunosuppressed. And so, you know, very concerned about them, but love the FaceTime chats I'm having with Dad. I'm also quintessential sandwich generation. So I've got an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old who are asking lots of questions and are concerned about what's next for them. So trying to be focused on my immediate family circle and taking care of them. I also have really experienced a shift in what I need to be as a dean, trying to lead 1,200 students in 48 states, 150 faculty and staff. And it means I have to be centered, and it means I have to ask for help in these times. Sometimes that help is, hey, can we cancel this next meeting? I need just 30 minutes to get my thoughts together, and then we can get back together. So doing pretty well. Thanks for asking.
Dill, how are you doing?
I'm doing better. I had a bit of a rough start to the isolation. I was in finals, and I was also dealing with just chronic pain that was going on for a couple of weeks. And so it was taking me some time to adjust to the isolation because it kind of came out of nowhere, which isn't true. I mean, we had known about it for a while, but I've just accepted that this is going to be a day-by-day process. There are going to be days that will be better than others. And I'm just trying to be hopeful, and I'm trying to be optimistic. I think I'm sort of a negative Nancy, which isn't very good, and I'm trying to change that about myself. And so this isolation and this pandemic has really forced me to reflect on myself and how I deal with stress of this nature, stress that obviously I don't think any of us had ever imagined this to ever happen. This is not something that we think about, but I don't know. I think in these times I appreciate my friends more. I appreciate my family more, and I definitely appreciate my friends who are doctors, right? Like just hearing what they're going through and like sort of asking them for advice, but also just offering anything I can. And I think in this moment in time, what's really important is checking up on one another, right? Just
Isn't that true?
How are you? I think we're all in a very vulnerable state right now. So I've accepted that we're all vulnerable. So just asking like how everyone is, that's the first step. So I've been doing really well. Thank you for asking.
You bet, always. So here's how we're going to run this for the close to 80 people who are here. We are going to, I'm going to jump off camera, and I'm going to be behind the scenes taking notes on the questions that you're putting into the chat window. You can also use the Q&A function. I will be monitoring both of those through this Zoom technology. And Dill is going to ask some questions for about half an hour of Christine and Amanda, and then I'm going to pop back in and represent and ask the questions of the folks that we have joining us today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dill, and I'm just excited to sit and listen.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you both are doing very well. We've all witnessed so much in the last 2 weeks, both in our community and just across this nation. What are some examples that you all can think of caring for community that you've seen?
Amanda, do you want to start, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Christine.
Great, thank you. I think what has been so extraordinary over the past 2 weeks, which is where I'm also hanging on to such great pieces of light and great hope. And I love what you said of being able to recognize where we need to be. But it's been the small things that folks have been reaching out on and what they're doing, and redefining who community is and who a caring community is. So two little more personal examples, and then I have to take a step back and say I've never been more proud to be part of Colorado, and how I see Colorado rallying together, and how our governor is leading, and how the university is leading. That has been pretty extraordinary. But I think my favorite caring community, I'm going to go back to my 89-year-old mom, who used to get her hair done every week. Very important to her, but that sense of community. We got an email from her salon yesterday saying, we all have iPhones. We can't do her hair, but how about we do a virtual hello to her and the chatting like we would do if we were in the salon. That's what a caring community is beginning to look like.
Love it. I love it. I'm from the rural South, and I keep thinking about the good old barn raisings. And for those of you that don't know what those are, when a couple would get married, they just got married. There was no honeymoon afterwards. Instead, the whole community came together to build a barn for them, which then represented the place where they would be able to sustain and care for their future family. So I am seeing this real turn toward family and immediate community in terms of mutual support. And that's where it starts. That's the glue of community caring, is recognizing and valuing those that we have regular contact with. I think what I've been, two things came to mind for me. So I'm a budding yoga practitioner, and I have been so amazed at how the yoga community has recognized that it is not just physical exercise, it is truly spiritual practice. And just like churches have moved online, yoga studios have moved online, and I've joined some of those classes, and just to feel the love and support and people checking in on each other. I also have been really inspired about the commitment to checking in on those that are isolated and older and who may not have family or friends. And so neighbors really doing that due diligence to check in on older adults, and then going to get them groceries and support them in that way. I'm on the app Nextdoor for my community here in Littleton. And I mean, there's literally hundreds of posts every day of examples of that kind of care.
So Amanda, I have to jump in, and Dill, excuse me for one moment. I love that you went to the barn raising piece of things, because I think you know, this United Way here in Denver was the first United Way in the country, which I think speaks to who we are as Coloradans, of that coming together. But it also is why I'm so very excited about what your new book is, because I think that's the very basis of what democracy is, what Tocqueville wrote about. So I love the idea of the barn raising. I think it's going to redefine things for all of us.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely, and we're definitely going to get to our book towards the last half of this interview. But we've called today's conversation Caring for a Community in a Virtual World. You've already kind of spoken about community, but would you share with us maybe a definition that you would have of what caring for community looks like? And is there more than one definition?
There definitely is. This was the topic of my dissertation. It's like, be careful what you do your dissertation on, right? And Christine just cited Alexis de Tocqueville, and his concept of community care and what he saw in the United States during his studies here in the 1800s was that it was really self-interest properly understood, that we recognized that our ability to care and thrive as humans was predicated on our ability to care and help others thrive. And that kind of mutual reciprocity it has really been the glue of community connection and engagement since the beginning. I also think of it sometimes in concentric circles, like you can have communities of affinity, and then you can have communities at play. So I mentioned that neighborhood app earlier, but then Christine had this great example of affinity, right? Thinking about her mom and going to get her hair done. So I think there's, we have to think about it in multiple ways, multiple communities.
I think what I love about that, Amanda, is you put a frame around what I've been seeing happening is, I think there are multiple communities, and we're going to be redefining them in very different ways. And I think this virtual world is going to allow us to do that, perhaps in ways we never dreamed of before. So again, with all the the angst, the real angst that is happening with us. There is this emerging new connections that are being made that I actually believe will redefine how we look at our own families, but how we look at our neighbors and how we look at the community in large.
Totally, totally.
Absolutely. So between the two of you wonderful ladies, you've changed systems, policies, and neighborhoods. You both aren't just following best practices, but you're defining them. What are best practices in terms of listening to, analyzing, and interpreting what a community needs?
I think this is going to be one of the most redefining things that have happened, certainly in my world, but I think those of us who serve the nonprofit sector and who are privileged to hold the community is, we become community stewards to understand. We have always understood that in service, we have to understand in partnership what is actually happening in the community, that I can't just sit back and think I know what is best for this community because I know a best practice or I've read the most recent. I don't live in that community. I'm not that mom today in that community who's worried about how I may be feeding my kids breakfast because the schools are closed today. So we are very fortunate at the United Way that we run, and I can talk a little bit more about that, a 211 help center where anyone can call in the community for support. And what is incredibly important right now for us is that we are listening to those voices. We are understanding from the neighborhoods, from the residents that live in that neighborhood. That voice is critically important for us to be able to live our mission in serving the community.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I've been thinking a lot about science as of late and how important it is. And I do think that pairing the voices then with the science and how important it is to move both in rapid real time to aggregate what those needs are is critically important. I think we're going to see a resurgence, I hope, in faith and science and data and the epidemiological data that's coming out right now. I mean, to think that, you know, 3 weeks ago, there was this perception that that COVID didn't impact young people. And now the data is showing us something completely different. So I think about science also and its role and paired with voices. I also, I've been thinking about journalism. And Dill, I love that you're a journalism student. It has been fascinating to see the resurgence of journalism and what it means to present the facts as they are. I've loved how the Colorado Sun and the Denver Post, the Atlantic, the Washington Post have dropped their firewalls and they have special series on the science and on the stories and bringing those forward. I think that that's phenomenal. I do, when I think about community needs, though, I think it's important we think about community assets too. And I know Christine does, right? Like it's one thing to map what the needs are, but we also have to map the strengths and resilience that we have to get us through this. And so how can we even change the conversation to be, this may be the emerging needs, and then what do we have to capitalize and build on that can help to meet those needs?
Amanda, I don't think you could have said anything more important than understanding what community assets are and understand the structure of those community assets. Some of the most powerful leaders that I have ever met are never going to have a title of CEO. They are never going to have a title of dean. They are going to have the title of the mom in the neighborhood who knows exactly what assets are there. And that is the power. And I think that you couldn't have said anything more important. And I think, again, one of the bright spots that may come out of that as we listen to voices, we may also be able to learn where those assets are that we never expected before.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
In your communities, going back to journalism and sort of how that shaped things, I think with the media, the media is guilty of doing this, but it can really overwhelm you, right? With the facts, with you know, all this information about COVID-19. In your respective communities, what are you hearing about COVID-19, and what do people need right now?
Christine, you're right at the center. Take this for us.
I think one of the things we're hearing right now, which Amanda, I know you've helped me understand, is we have to, the needs we're hearing right now are those very immediate needs of my family. If the schools are closed, and I counted on the school to make sure my little one had lunch, or had, so the very initial needs we're hearing are what we all want for our own families, that we're fed, that we have a safe place to be, that my family's needs are being met first. And so when we talk about caring communities and ways of thinking virtually how we do that, those very real everyday needs are what we're hearing more than anything. And then I think in time, and will my job be there, and all the things that we hold dear for our families is really what we're hearing first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. It's those basic needs that are really at the forefront. In crises like this that are of a physical nature, you also see the increased medical needs. So I hope people are paying attention to the need for blood. That is still considered essential. And so even under lockdown, if you were to go to donate, you would be allowed to do that. I also think it's important that we think about innovation in this space, in the healthcare space in particular. And so I've been so impressed with my dean colleague, JB Holston and Brad Feld out of Boulder, and the kind of tech innovation and mass mobilization of networks of people that can come together to create more masks, to create more ventilators, who are saying, we're not going to wait, we're going to fill this gap together. So I think that's the other side, is really investing in the immediate healthcare projected needs that have been articulated by Governor Polis.
Amanda, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, again, where I'm so proud to live in Colorado, that you saw what the governor did and what JB and Noel Ginsburg are standing up, and we're marrying those two things. What are the immediate needs of the human service needs, and what are the real medical needs, and how do we innovate that? The other thing, Dale, that you said, I think is such an important question, is being bombarded by the media. Who becomes our trusted voice? Who do I listen to? Is going, and it may look different in different communities, who that trusted voice is. So the fact that we have storytellers and people that reflect who our values are, or where we live, or who we look like, or what our faith is going to become even more important. It's that trusted storyteller.
Yeah, and that, I completely agree with that. And Amanda, thank you so much for bringing up the blood donation, because I actually thought that you weren't able to do that anymore, but I'm glad that that's still available to do. I hate needles, but I'm going to do it anyways because my community needs me. So Christine, you sort of talked about this a little bit already, but obviously there are certain communities and populations that are suffering the most, and you know communities that we're really worried about. The at-risk communities, like you mentioned, Amanda, millennials who were once not considered very susceptible to this are now being hospitalized. And so we're learning about this as we go, right? And so putting an equity lens on this, are there communities, folks who are experiencing the coronavirus and perhaps the economic fallout, like we know most harshly, that need more help than others?
Yes is the answer. And I think what we're seeing, and what we will see more, Dale, when you look across Colorado and you map where under-resourced communities have been, based on many factors, you can map the communities, and those communities pop. up. They have, to Amanda's point, I don't want to lose the assets those communities have, but they have been under-resourced historically. Those are the communities that now remain, and even more so, vulnerable in terms of, if I live in a community that does not have a grocery store with fresh produce, and that has even become exacerbated now because I'm not able to jump on the bus and go 3 bus stops to. So we are seeing vulnerable communities, again, who have amazing resilience, even more vulnerable and under-resourced. And that is what I think we're all going to have to pay a lot of attention to.
You know, I'm thinking about this in 2 different ways. So one is maybe I need to limit some of my media consumption, but some of the horror stories in those communities, in their nursing care and assisted care facilities, where literally every single person has the virus and they're being abandoned. I don't think that's going to happen here in Colorado, or hopefully not in anywhere else. But I do think being sensitive to that healthcare burden and then concentrations. And so again, this is where our epidemiological data can help us, and as much as we can map and keep track of that. The second piece for me is I'm trying to think about long term. So there's the immediate, but then there's also thinking into the future. I'm very concerned about our service industry workers and those that are members of the gig economy, and what this is going to mean for them for the long term. We move from an industrial society to a service-oriented society, and now we're going to see the economic consequences of that. And so I'm beginning to already think about what are the policy solutions then that need to walk into that. It's not just about an immediate stimulus package. Instead, it should be, what are the long-term social economic policies that will undergird our society such that if this, heaven forbid, were to ever happen again, our people could withstand it, the shock of it.
Absolutely. And I've had a lot of friends who have lost their jobs, right? Like when restaurants are closing, and I'm pretty sure all the restaurants around you, if I'm not mistaken, have been closed down. They're still delivering, but you know, so many people have been impacted by this, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to work from home, and that, you know, my job doesn't necessarily require me to be, you know, physically at work, and that I'm able to, you know, continue working from home. But that's not a luxury that a lot of people have, including my parents. And it kind of puts things into perspectives. You know, I want to talk about challenges, because that is a great challenge, right? You know, not being able to work from home. What challenges are we facing in terms of providing people the care and support they need as a result of the isolation and staying at home / shelter in place orders? And is this making it harder or easier for us to care for those who need it the most?
I just took a deep breath too.
Same time. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, I wish. Such a good question. Dill, I think in many ways, for our, again, most vulnerable neighbors, people who are experiencing homelessness, people who, it is making it harder right now. Our systems were not set up in many cases to have people be in isolation. Access to the internet, or access to information, access to healthcare. It is one of the most challenging things, I think, that we are all facing, really, for our most vulnerable, our vulnerable neighbors.
I think there's just some circumstances we're just not going to have answers to. I've been thinking about those that are living in violent situations and then told to shelter in place, to reach out in any way. Having worked in a domestic violence shelter, it can be so detrimental to those living in those circumstances. And so then to think about them there and not able to reach them. So on the one hand, I think that there's just some challenges we've yet to consider what the solutions might be. On the other, it's fascinating to think about the role of technology in mental health counseling in particular. And I just to put a plug in, I'm so grateful for my colleagues at the Graduate School of Professional Psychology and the School of Social Work who have worked together to put on a telehealth training via Zoom tomorrow to over 400 practitioners in Colorado. It is exciting to think about how we're helping to equip them with the tools then that they can just move their clients to be through a telehealth modality and it still be effective. So I think there's some challenges. I'm not sure what the solutions are. And then I've been bolstered, I guess, in some ways with hope around how we can use technology to walk into some solutions.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I've just been so impressed by how the DU community has really come together to handle this. It's been so impressive to see, our leaders in our community really stepping up to the point, like you mentioned, Amanda, and how, I mean, you have so much on your plate. You're taking care of so many people, and you're trying to center yourself, and so many people are looking to you for guidance. And it's people like you, individuals like you and Christine, that have really made this better, right? Like made this experience, as unfortunate as it is, it's made it easier, right, to talk to one another and be vulnerable with one another. So I would just want to thank you both for being such strong leaders in this horrible situation. I do want to highlight both of you a little more. So Christine, the Mile High United Way helped 250,000 people in the Denver community last year through 34,000 hours of volunteer time, which is unbelievably incredible looking at the reach and impact of something like that. How is Mile High United Way helping in this particular crisis? You mentioned 211 a little bit, but do you mind telling everyone what your 211 service is in case people don't know? And is it extra busy right now?
Thank you. I have to tell you, this is one and you framed it so beautifully, of the challenges and at the same time the absolute sparks of light that happen. And I am so incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by 105. This is where I do get emotional. 105 of the most extraordinary staff people who get up every single day with the sole purpose of wanting to serve their community, who are willing to work around the clock and understand our mission is even more important and are innovating ways to do that. Our 211 call center is a free and confidential place you can call for help, for resources. We may not have all the answers, but we are working so hard to have the resources that Colorado is garnering together to know where in this very challenging time you can go. Dill, before this all began, we took an average of 300 phone calls a day. Yesterday, we took over 1,300 phone calls. So I think you can see what is happening. And again, our 211 call navigators and the entire United Way team is rallying to be there to provide. We also support the nonprofit community. We know that many nonprofits are being hurt right at the moment because donors are rightly so supporting COVID relief efforts. And it's got to be an and. Please keep supporting your local nonprofit who are fighting so hard to provide the services into the community. And then we have the ability, there are so many volunteers who have stepped forward to say, what can I do virtually? Or how can I perhaps service or help another nonprofit or help with the 211 calls. So I could not be more proud of the United Way team, but also incredibly proud of our partnerships. I had to smile when Ann said what she loved most about Amanda was before she even came on board, Amanda reached out. The very first offer that I got from United Way of how can we stand by you was from Amanda in the Graduate School of Social Work of how can our students be there. So to the entire DU community, on behalf of the United Way, we are so grateful for you standing by us.
That's amazing. I love that. Amanda, you just published a new book early this month. Congratulations. The title of the book, Connecting Civic Engagement and Social Innovation Toward Higher Education's Democratic Promise. Could you tell us a little bit about the book and how it connects to caring for community? And what do you talk about in the book that is instructive in this particular situation?
So it's really oriented to higher education, and that our purpose should be to develop habits of the mind and skills that are in service to society. Mm-hmm. And we put it in a historical context. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I've been in higher ed administration for 20 years. So we lived through the impact of 9/11 on a generation that came into higher ed thinking that they could be the sole solutions. They saw government fail them. They may have lived through circumstances where they saw community fail them. And so there was this resurgence of this idea of, I can single-handedly change the world. And in many ways, the community values were shifted. And so what the book represents is a collection of examples across higher ed where we have married this kind of innovator's mindset, if you will, with the skills and the practices of gauging community needs and seeking community voice on the solutions that they want. So it's this intersection of these two ideals that we think can be trained, that can be part of what it means to be a critical thinker and to help our students adopt that kind of mindset. We've not necessarily done it intentionally. It's in pockets in different schools on any given university campus. And what the rallying call was in the book is that an entire university should really orient its operational practices in terms of investing in its communities and small businesses, and thinking about how it creates pipelines from its high schools onto its campus, to then how it props up those educational experiences for a workforce and a citizenry that is so badly needed to have both the desire to do well, but then the skills to mobilize community in innovation. One of the things that I've loved to see is how students on different campuses in different parts of the world, as they hear about these the lack of ventilators, they then have, what do you need? How many do you need? Let's go back to the lab and see if we can get our 3D printer to produce what you need. That's the kind of orientation that we want all students that are coming to our campus to want to cultivate and to leave with the skills necessary to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like I only have time for one more question, but I want to talk about, for the last question, I want to talk about the 3 W's, which is wealth, wisdom, and work. And people often talk about giving those 3 W's. Can you give us some ideas of what we can do in each of those areas to help right now?
Sure, I'll be glad to start. We need all 3 right now. It's never more important that we've needed all 3. So on the wealth side, please, go to unitedwaydenver.org/COVID relief. There is a lot of ways that you can support the work United Way is doing and the work that the governor is doing across the state. Wisdom and work. The volunteers that are coming forward are bringing us the most innovative new ways to think about how we can serve the community. So again, if you go to unitedwaydenver.org, you will see volunteer opportunities. We need that wisdom from you, and we need that work from you. And the other place statewide, because I know that DU has reaches across the entire state and across the entire country. Another place to go to look is to helpcolorado.now, helpcoloradonow.org. you will see what's happening across the state. And finally, for all of us, because it is about caring for ourselves as well, please know that 211 is standing by.
I, of course, reinforce all of that. We're so grateful to have Christine's leadership in an incredibly responsive, united way. I also would just add on the piece around caregiving and caring for others is to also care for self. And I think about the oxygen mask, and then it needs to go on yourself first. And so I would just add to the panel of very community-driven resources and portals that Christine outlined, how important it is that you also find and listen to yourself, and then follow through on what it is that you need to be able to lead and care for yourself through this moment.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been terrific. And we thought that we had prepared some tough questions, but get ready. We've got, no. This is, I think, a really interesting one. What leadership skill, if you could name one or maybe two leadership skills, have you had to most call on during this time?
Oh, and gosh, I think the ability to truly listen to my team, who are the frontline experts, and to stand by them and to allow them to lead. It has really been to be a collaborative leader right now, while still being and holding on to making the hard decisions. I need to hear from our talented team at the end of the day, though decisions need to be made, and I have had to draw on that. Listen, think quickly, and act quickly.
Great.
I totally agree with that. It's just rapid fire. It's like playing a nonstop game of ping pong. I think for me, it is taking that pause. I also tend to be, I'm pretty driven and ambitious, and I love action. And I think pulling back and trying to hold that big picture for everyone. So they've got their respective areas of expertise that I need to be able to aggregate up and then mobilize that will be hopefully in a triaged manner where we're picking up crises as they come to us. I think the other piece of this is that and I have just committed to communication in as many forms as possible. And even if I don't know something, just saying I don't know it, but helping people get some sense of that big picture, while also holding space for them to just be human and to soften the edges for all of us and our expectations and how we show up for one another.
I think that's great. Tim, who asked this question, had a follow-up to that, which I thought was interesting, which is, what has been the hardest for you to adapt to? And there's a little bit of that in both of your answers, right? Christine, adapting to elevating that volume on those voices, and Amanda maybe taking pauses. I think too about adapting to the virtual world, adapting to the pace of decisions and the magnitude. But answer that question for him. What's been most difficult to adapt to?
I think for me, it's been a couple of things. One of the hardest things for me to adapt to is this virtual world. My style of communication and my style is being very with people, being present with people, and the technology piece has been challenging of how do you keep a team of 104 people who are used to being together in a building now not being together,
right?
Being able to stay connected, being able to hear, and I think Amanda alluded to it, the pace of decision making and balancing the number of requests that we are getting has been challenging.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Amanda?
I was going to say my knees are killing me. I ordered a stand-up desk last night, so I'm excited.
I love it.
That's great.
I think this reveals so much about me, but I'm old school. I used to print everything. I was so paper driven, and that I'd get an email, and to really ingest it, I had to hold it in my hands like the morning newspaper, Well, my goodness, when it's coming at you this fast, you just can't do that. So I've actually, to take in the information and then begin to think about the big picture, I've taken to drawing. I've got, and I don't mean like, drawing a sunset, but more schematic drawings of, okay, this piece of information just came in. It has implications for this. It has implications for that. So more changing my mental schema and how I take in information and process it that's been hard for me to adapt to, but I finally gave up the printing.
That is so cool. I ordered for my office a whiteboard desk.
Yes.
For that, which I'm excited about. But that's for the office at the office, so I may not see it for a while. Did you, Amanda, Nina has asked us, what is DU doing in the greater community? We're doing a lot, as much as we can, for faculty, staff, and students, certainly reaching out to alums. I can give a couple things, but I think you have a good perspective. What are we doing that you love?
I think you've got a great perspective. I can speak about the School of Social Work, and that even though we've really been forced to pull our students from field, from internships, many of them, I would say nearly all, are still engaged with their agencies in completing work remotely. And so just that sustained commitment to community, and that we're going to see it through this, I think is important. And I know that many of the other schools that have internships have taken the same approach. One of the things that I have begun, and it might be filed under the category of too soon, but I think it's important that, I think about Tulane after Hurricane Katrina, and how Tulane completely reoriented itself to community, to really embody what I was talking about with my book, this commitment to innovation that's community-based. And what would it look like for DU to walk into that space on the other side? And so I've just begun to think about, even at the School of Social Work, how does our curriculum look different? How do we support our faculty to answer the research questions that community has, and in a different and a more engaged and purposeful way?
Yeah. For all of you out there, this is why I love working with Amanda. So she's next to me on my screen, and I will vouch for the fact that she prints everything, because she comes to meetings and she's got.
I love it.
But you're so on top of things. I would just add, there are a few things that have happened. I mean, these webinars, and we would love feedback and input about what else can we bring to you in terms of topics. We'll be doing a little bit more around mental health, and then maybe some contests and just fun ways to stay engaged. So C+V is doing that. I also know that, in our business school, they put out a notice to leaders, and had a couple of faculty members who specialize in leading through crisis, invite people. And I think they have, 40 CEOs show up for a conversation earlier this week on campus. So there are lots of small ways that we're doing this, Nina, to answer your question. And I think, the dance party. I can't forget about the dance party. The Graduate School for Professional Psychology is running a dance party for everybody who's got little people at home to get the wiggles out at 8:30. So I think in the way that DU does, each small, school and community within our community is putting really good stuff out into the world. Nancy Richmond, who is she's a professor of sociology and criminology here at DU, and also connected to the Women's College. She's our research director. She has asked, there have been a lot of news stories about how women might be disproportionately affected through this situation, in terms of both the isolation, the care at home that's required. What do you, I just would love for both of you to comment on that.
Christine?
Not being in the academic world, but more anecdotally, the calls that are coming in to 211 are often more from women than from men as well. So I think this relates to the multiple roles that women play as mothers, as caregivers. Amanda, you're being in the sandwich generation. I am also incredibly privileged to serve on the board of the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I can tell you that the hotline calls are increasing in some ways and not in others, because women are now being isolated potentially even more. So I do have very great concern going forward that this will disproportionately impact women.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, and Nancy, forgive me for waxing philosophical here a little bit, but I think as a feminist, I think this actually can be a moment that normalizes caregiving for all of society, because the weaknesses of relying on women to carry the burden of the world are laid bare. It is in front of us that it is just not sustainable. So I do, you know, perhaps I'm also idealistic, but I am hoping that through this there can be some normalization and not glorification of care for community, but instead that this is indeed what is necessary to keep us all alive. And how can we actually create communities of care and support that are not on one person, but are truly networked and responsibility of us all?
Yeah. I think about the World Economic Forum says that 75% of all unpaid care is provided by women globally. And so how do we change the stereotype, the gender stereotype that is there? I also think because my other passion is around mental health, and I get frustrated about the stigmas that are there. And I know we had a terrific campaign in the Denver metro area that was called Man Therapy. I don't know if anybody remembers or saw those, right? Billboards, and just kind of engaging in a funny and very approachable way, inviting men to ask for help. Because I think the other thing, you know, Christine, when you say that a lot of your calls are coming from women, I think that probably is because of the burden that they're carrying. But I also wonder sometimes, is it because men, you know, playing in their lane, swimming in their lane, aren't supposed to ask for help in the same way? So it's a lot. It is so much. You mentioned JB, you mentioned Brad Feld, you both are engaged in a lot of these conversations at a state level. Julie has asked us, what are some of the ways in which assets that exist are being mapped? So empty hotel rooms, dorm rooms, how are we making sure that that's staying coordinated at a state level?
Yeah, Christine.
So I have been privileged to have a little glimpse into the power of the governor's office and the Office of Emergency Management. And again, why I'm so incredibly proud to be living in the state of Colorado right now, as well as what our own city and counties are doing. We have people working tirelessly at those offices of emergency management to understand the assets that we have as a community, how they might be deployed. Again, we saw the governor stand up his with the innovation task force that is saying, how do we become more creative? The business community has stepped forward to say, here is what we have, here is how we can help. The United Way itself has gotten so many phone calls from corporations saying, here's what we have available, of what can we do. But I think the governor's office is working, and Philanthropy Colorado, a wonderful organization that creates all the foundations, an association for foundations. How are we leveraging our funds together to be able to have as much of a coordinated response as possible?
Yeah, that makes us all feel good. Anything else to add?
Ditto.
Okay. She down in that part of the screen for you? Yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna ask one last question. If you could wrap your arms around all of us and put one wish out there for the people on this call, what would that wish be?
I would wrap my arms around you all in gratitude, and I would wish you courage.
Yes.
I would wish you compassion and grace.
Dill, I want to see if you want to answer that one too.
I like the gratitude piece, and I was gonna say patience, but because this is really testing all of our patience. I mean, I think I'd wrap my arms around and hope, wish you all relief and wish you all some sort of happiness, right? Just hoping that we can find the silver lining through all of this. It's really difficult, but yeah.
Yeah, I love that. My wish for everybody is belonging. I think knowing that we belong to each other, knowing that we belong to the communities at DU, the United Way creates communities and neighborhoods and volunteer systems, so many things that we can belong to. So thank you so much for the work that you are both doing. You probably both know this, but you are people that I admire greatly. And I think so hard. I try to channel you sometimes. It's a little, it's a lot, to think like, what would Christine do? What would Amanda do? So I can't tell you how grateful that I am that you were able to join us today and to take time out of your busy schedules to do this. And for everybody who's here, we are going to have some more of these. We're going to try to do them every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. and we'll be putting out the schedules. Brian, who is behind the scenes, thank you so much for handling all of our IT. He's putting up online the link to where we have information about our coronavirus response at DU. And then also, if you have any ideas, suggestions, feedback at communityplusvalues@du.edu, please log in or email us and let us know. And so with that, I hope that everybody has a decent day and be well. Thanks.